using the terms mindfulness and mindfulness practice or practices when writing your paper and in talking with others can be a source of confusion if we're not using them with an eye to what they're really pertaining to. Now, most all the time, this passes unnoticed, but what it can do in conversation is it can just further the ambient confusion around mindfulness, and when writing, it can even more so lead to that confusion or reinforce that confusion. Importantly, sometimes that's because we're confused about some of the subtleties or the differences in certain circumstances in usage, but oftentimes we're just not being attentive to and using the word with precision, as is the case in many other ways when we're writing. So let me share with you in a nutshell what to be attending to when you are writing your paper using these terms, and I suggest at some point you look at every place that you've used one of these terms and you check in on whether or not it is what you intended. So, for example, a sentence might say, mindfulness helps one be more focused, or mindfulness leads to greater focus. Now, that could be mindfulness leads to greater focus, and it could be that practicing mindfulness or mindfulness practices can lead to greater focus. Both of those can be true, and they're very different statements. So let's just address each of them. When we talk about mindfulness, we're largely talking about a capacity, a state of mind, one that is open and receptive and focused and attentive and aware and all those sorts of things. And embedded in that is what it's not. We're less likely to be distracted and distractible, less likely to be caught in agitated emotional states. And this is because of the strength of the mindfulness that we are carrying with us in those moments. And of course, that strength of that mindfulness will fluctuate and continually does. So that's mindfulness. Haven't mentioned a practice, haven't mentioned meditation, and a consideration of mindfulness practices and the focused attention practice and different meditative practices has nothing to do with mindfulness. This is where the confusion oftentimes comes in. And when I say nothing to do, I'm being a little bit strong in my phrasing of it. Of course, practicing mindfulness relates to mindfulness, but it need not. No one need ever have come up with a mindfulness practice. No one need ever practice mindfulness again. No new person ever need practice mindfulness for us to be talking about mindfulness. Mindfulness practices, along with other things, but for our purposes, we're largely discussing mindfulness practices in this regard. They help us cultivate greater mindfulness. So when we're talking about a practice, a meditative practice that falls under the umbrella of a mindfulness practice, like focused attention or the body scan or open monitoring or connection or mindful self-compassion, and a variety of related practices that can go by different names, we're talking about a mindfulness practice. And if we use the word mindfulness when we're referring to them, that would probably be the most common way that the term is misused. But why go there? Why create that confusion? Let's be crisp and clear in our usage. And when we're referring to mindfulness by itself, we are clearly referring to that state, that present moment capacity in that mindfully aware form. So if we go back to what I said a few minutes ago about how mindfulness can enhance, or however I phrased it, mindfulness can enhance focus, or mindfulness leads to greater focus, or mindfulness enhances focus. Yes, the more mindfully aware we are, the more we are able to place our attention where we choose, because we just have that capacity strongly available to us. The more we're readily able to notice, distract thoughts wandering off and be able to, notice and return, And related to that, the ability to notice the emotional state changes taking place and down-regulate that emotional activity through a variety of means. In this case, probably through a settling technique. We're referring to mindfulness. That state of mindful awareness facilitates greater focus. At the same time, practicing mindfulness can facilitate greater focus. But those are two very different framings. They're two very different points that are being made, and it's important to appreciate that and to be attentive to that when writing your paper. I hope this is helpful in clarifying around this, and wish you well.